Happy Earth Day. And hello, my garden friends. This is Jersey Shore Lisa from MyNJGarden.com. And I wanted to share with you an Earth Day early spring tour of my NJ Garden. So I have a front yard food forest. There's a great diversity of plants, edible plants planted here. And I wanted to share what they look like with you on April 20th, 2020. So please join me. Let's get started. This is coming down right off of my front porch, and I hope you all can hear me. I'm using a little mic, so even though it is windy here, it's a blustery day in New Jersey, you should be able to hear okay. This is the first garden bed that I have right along the path from my driveway to my front door. So back in the back here, we have irises that are coming up really nicely. And right now, it's probably pretty close to noon. So this is the first hint of sun that this garden is getting. It's really on the north side of this wall, so it's shaded for a good part of the morning. This is a little liatris, which is a native perennial that's coming up. Back here I have a small Virginia sweet spire that I planted last fall, and this is the first season that's in the ground. Here's some chives. That is a witch hazel, and this is its first full year in the ground. We have a couple of little patches of thyme. This used to be a very large patch of thyme, but a lot of it died back after last winter. It got very cold last winter, and it just decimated that thyme patch. So I didn't cry about it. I just lifted it, and it had reseeded in a couple of places. So I just let those little guys pop up wherever they want to. These guys are Virginia bluebells. I had just moved a couple of pieces of root over here last summer after they were done blooming. And there's a couple of tulips that are trying to struggle through their first season. This is an extremely happy aromatic aster that has spread out significantly since I first put it in. There's some more chives, more irises, and over here is the rain garden, just getting started for the season. So the first things you'll see, now the rain garden catches a lot of water. My yard is very sloped, and a lot of water was cascading down the hill from this downspout here on the corner of the house. So it flows over the sidewalk, and now it flows into the rain garden, which is dug into the ground. There's a depression there and a berm on the downhill side of the slope. It catches a lot of the water that runs off the roof from that downspout, and it's planted with native plants to the New Jersey area. So this is a red aronia berry. It's also called a chokeberry. And these, though edible, are never delicious for humans to eat. As a matter of fact, the berries tend to stay on the bush through most of the winter. I've rarely seen the birds really go to town on eating these berries, but it is about to bloom. It blooms in early spring, and you can see these buds are swelling, and it has beautiful white flowers all over it. So it does have edible berries, though I don't know that the wildlife loves it. However, the pollinators sure do love it when it blooms. So it's pretty, and it gets to stay. The ground is being covered by some spreading strawberry plants that I've put in there. And then there's also an American beautyberry right here, and it's just starting to leaf out. These are turtle heads, the very beginning of them popping up, pink turtle heads. And this is Solomon seal. Solomon seal has an edible root. It's native, and it does really well in shady moist areas, and that's what this is most of the time, actually. This is a balloon flower, and I think the reason it's as mature looking as it is right now is because it's really close to all those rocks, so it is a little bit warmer than the rest of the garden. Those roots are a little warmer than the rest, so it got a little bit of a head start. Little microclimate right there. These are great coneflower, and honestly, through the whole winter, they never fully died back, but the leaves have gotten bigger since it's warming up for spring. This is a baptisia, which is a perennial. It's called false indigo, and it is also native, and it is nitrogen fixing. So this is a very sandy soil those roots should take nitrogen out of the air, fix them into nodules along their roots, and it's not a nitrogen fixing plant, but because it's in the legume family, it has a relationship with nitrogen fixing bacteria along its roots. So that is there to improve the soil, and I absolutely love the flowers. They kind of remind me a lot of lupines, which are also nitrogen fixing, and they have these spires of blue flowers, and they're so pretty. That does get to be very big during the growing season, probably like 3 feet or more across and high. And then there's some coneflower in here. That's actually a cultivar. It's called tomato soup. So it's actually a red coneflower instead of the straight species, which is purple. And coneflower is also echinacea, and they are also native to this area of the United States. This is the front bed, which is my meadow strip that I've expanded to include 2 new honeyberry bushes, which are struggling because the temperatures sure have dipped at night recently. I just put them in, but I think they're going to recover okay. They just have to get through this cold snap, and I'm trying to baby them a little bit, take care of them, and make sure that they do. And that is a new cherry tree that I just put in this spring. And this is the meadow strip, which is really helping with runoff from my very sloped front yard. So anything that gets past that rain garden up there comes down this big slope, and we do have other gutters that don't feed the rain garden. So we were getting a lot of runoff into the street, and a lot of sand would go out into the street. So I created this riparian zone to protect our waterways, which if water runs off into the street and towards the sewers, it goes directly into our Barnegat Bay, and we want to protect the bay from pollution and yard chemicals and anything we can do to keep the water on our property is going to be good for the Barnegat Bay and reduce pollution. So that's what we're doing here. This looks very weedy, and it kind of is, but I am encouraging perennial flowers to happen in this meadow strip. I've been spreading wildflower seed and tucking perennials in the spring and fall for the past couple of years, and I have a couple things that are coming up that I'm really happy about, including alfalfa, which I've been picking and feeding to my bunny rabbit, my pet bunny rabbit, and he absolutely loves it, gobbles it all up. There are also some interesting perennials up here. This is more liatris. That is New Jersey tea. New Jersey tea is native to New Jersey, but also to the whole East Coast, and it was actually used to make tea during the Revolutionary War, when it was hard to get tea from England because we didn't get along. There are some asters back there. This is an Adam's needle yucca that's recovering nicely. I rescued it from the Municipal Recycling Center last spring. And here are the terraced beds that make up the food forest. So this is the Nanking cherry bush. It's a bush cherry. It grows very similar to forsythia in that it blooms right around the same time, but with small white flowers instead of small yellow flowers. It also can be planted and trained into a hedgerow, but that's not how I have it here. You can see that it bloomed and it is developing fruit. I don't know if you can see the cherries on there, but they're looking a little dark, and I have a feeling that that has to do with the cold snap, and hopefully it doesn't have to do with any kind of fungal infection. But there are some really pretty green cherries just starting to get a little bit of a blush on them, so we'll see how it does this year. This is some sedum and Montauk daisy that's coming back nicely. This one is just kind of a monster already. These get really big, and they bloom very late in the season, in the fall. So it's nice to have that seasonal interest when most other things are finished blooming. This here is a Red Haven peach tree, and there are peaches developing on that. That's done flowering for the year. These are more iris, and that's a peony right there coming up. This is a beach plum, and the beach plums will flower soon, but the leaves aren't even close. They leaf out fairly late in the spring, but they will bloom and be done blooming before they leaf out. Then this is a bonfire peach tree. It stays very dwarf. That's barely, I'd say, 3 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall. But it has this beautiful red foliage, and that's why I put it so near the front of the yard. It does create peaches that are edible, but I haven't ever gotten a delicious edible peach off of it. It's mostly an ornamental addition because I think it's so pretty, and the flowers are just gorgeous and pink when they bloom. But it's done blooming now, and the leaves are really putting on a show. There's another beach plum, and this is a new addition this year. This is an Asian pear that was just put in. This is a jujube, and then I have another jujube behind it. They leaf out fairly late too, and they flower with tiny flowers that are almost unnoticeable unless you come up real close to them. But a lot of people in this area who grow these tend to say that they like them because they do leaf out and flower after most fruit trees are done, so they kind of miss the pest cycle that bothers fruit trees in New Jersey. So they tend to get bothered by pests less frequently than other fruit trees. So we'll see how that goes. This is going to be only the second year these jujube trees are in the ground here in the food forest. These are 2 more coneflower. This is a buffalo berry shrub. That's a nitrogen fixing non-legume shrub. And that has not yet flowered. I think that's been in the ground probably 3 years now. So we'll see. I think it's supposed to only get to be about 6 feet mature height. So it seems to be a fairly slow grower, but it's a nice shape. I like it. This is sage. That never died back through the winter, and now it's really taking off for the spring. So I'm glad, because I wasn't sure if it was going to make it. I have a feeling that kind of acts the same way rosemary does. It might make it, it might not in this climate, and this one did. So hopefully it's long lived here. These are garlic chives, and they will flower with white flowers, and you can harvest the chives at any time during the growing season. Use them like regular chives. They just taste a little more garlicky than oniony. This is an apricot tree, and I've had to stake it for the last 2 years, but this past fall he decided to get really sturdy all on his own, and now he doesn't need to be staked anymore. He's very sturdy now, but still small, so we'll see how it does. It looks like it's pretty happy. It's leafed out nicely. This is a serviceberry, a little Saskatoon, and it was chopped in half at some point in the growing season last year. Last year was the first year, and a critter took it down by half. So it's coming back, and we'll see how it does this year. I hope it's really successful because I love serviceberries. This is another beach plum, and this one has a zillion buds on it. The other ones don't really, for some reason. I don't know how much pollination I'm going to get because the other ones don't look like they have many buds. But holy mackerel, there's a ton of buds on this one, and I have a feeling it's going to bloom pretty soon. I see the white peeking through those buds. Those flowers are going to pop. This is a high bush cranberry. It's in the viburnum family, and they bloom really beautifully right around the same time that the strawberries will bloom beneath it. So this whole bed kind of gets covered in white flowers probably next month. This is a valerian. That is a perennial, and it's a shame that in order to harvest and use it, you generally use the roots. So I'm not going to harvest it anytime soon. I'm going to really let it go for probably another year before I do any dividing and try to use the roots from that valerian plant. This is a gummy berry. A gummy berry, like the buffalo berry, is a nitrogen fixing shrub. Only the buffalo berry, I've heard that the berries are pretty astringent. They're not delicious for people, much more delicious for wildlife. Gummy berries, however, are supposed to be really sweet and tasty. So I'm excited about that. And this is only the second year. I put it in last season. So there's that one. And then on the other side of the high bush cranberry, there's the second gummy berry. I think I got these shrubs from One Green World last year. There's another Nanking cherry, a small Nanking cherry bush, and that's a seedling actually that I moved to that spot, and that is going to do really nicely there. It's taking off. This is a seedling of an elderberry from my other yard, and I was expecting it to get as tall as my original elderberry, but seedlings don't grow true to the parent always. I know it has flowered, it has produced fruit, but it's really not getting more than about 5.5 feet tall, which is really interesting for me for an elderberry. I kind of like it that size actually, and I like where it is. So there's that elderberry. There's some daffodils that are done now. This is an evening primrose that has self-seeded. They show up in different places in the food forest every spring because the seeds blow around and take root wherever they like. Evening primrose has pretty yellow flowers, and it's a rather tall native flower, and it gets about waist high, and pollinators really like it. And this is an apple tree. This is the Golden Delicious apple, and it is about to bloom, and hopefully the buds don't get damaged by the weather because it's going to get really cold again tonight. Here's another peony, and underneath all of this you can see some green leaves down there. That's all cilantro that reseeded from last year. This is a black aronia berry, and unlike the red aronia berries, the black aronia berries, even though they're still called choke cherries and are very bitter until they're very ripe, they do develop a fair bit of sugar by the time they're ripe, and they are good to eat. So you can make syrup out of them, or jelly, or jam, or put them into baked goods. And that is just a very handsome bush, and it's so pretty when it blooms. And it's nice because in this bed, right in front of it, is the purple-leafed sand cherry. That's just finishing up with its blooms. Such a pretty contrast with those super light pink and white flowers against those deep red leaves. And then when that's done blooming, the aronia will take over and really showcase its blooms in this bed. There's a rose down here, and we have one more apple tree It's the Honeycrisp apple. It's kind of a really weird shape, and I generally don't care about what shape the apple trees are, except this one is really leaning, so I need to put up a stake and kind of pull it in another direction so that it's a little straighter than it is. It's kind of doing a boogie right there. This is a lupine, and that is a lupine, and I can't wait till these blooms because they are just so pretty. They have like these triangular shaped spires. It's like an upside down ice cream cone, right? Then that's what the flowers are shaped like, and they're this bright purpley blue color, and they're great for the soil because they're nitrogen fixing too. This is a tree that I brought over from my other property. I had planted it so many years ago, I can't even tell you how long this tree has been in the ground. I did move it, but it has never flowered. It was supposed to be a pear. I have a feeling it was a seedling from a seller on eBay, and I don't even know what kind of variety it's supposed to be, but my other pears have already leafed out, and I just don't buy it. I'm very dubious about this tree. So this is its last chance. It's kind of on death row here. So if it doesn't flower, and I don't think it's going to, I'm cutting it down, and I'm going to put a new tree in this space, and I'm looking for the perfect plum tree. I have beach plums, I know, but I want a really good plum tree that's not going to get too tall because I have wires right there. So I'm kind of shopping around and deciding what to plant. What would you plant if you had the opportunity? What plum tree would you plant? Or if you have another suggestion, because I'm always looking for new and interesting things to add to the food forest. This is a brand new serviceberry. It's Saskatoon, but that's just another word for serviceberry, so I don't really know what to expect as far as the sizing of this that I'm going to get. I bought it from Northridge Nursery on Etsy, and then I have some comfrey here. Russian comfrey is all throughout the food forest, but this is the first one I'm pointing out to you today. And then I also have more strawberries. The strawberries that I have in the food forest are Ozark Beauty strawberries that I brought from my other property, and I've just they're dappled around the beds and they're spreading as they will. I never really introduced another variety, so that's what we've got. And then this is another coneflower. This is an elderberry that I pruned this back like crazy last year because there were so many canes and it was so heavy, and it was totally shading out this little pear, which the squirrels have totally chewed off most of the leaves on this one. This was leafing out beautifully, and then the squirrels chewed the leaves off for some reason. So hopefully I pruned it down hard so that it'll put a lot of energy into regrowing, and we'll see if it makes it. This pear has been through a lot. But we'll see how it does. I think it's going to be fine. This guy's a trooper. But this elderberry has been pruned back really hard down at the base, and it is just responding like crazy and sending up so many new shoots. This is a yastaberry. A yastaberry is a cross between a blackcurrant and a gooseberry, and this is the first time that it's blooming like crazy. There are so many flowers on this shrub, and it's self-fertile, and I really think we're going to get a ton of yastaberries this year, and I love the way they taste. So I'm glad to see all those berries on there. That's a rhubarb coming up really nicely. This is a bed that has 5 blueberries in it. 2 are really small, 2 are big. And it looks like they are flowering nicely, so I'm going to get a lot of blueberries. I'm going to have to protect them from the birds because the birds will steal them from me. This is a lingonberry shrub. Lingonberries are a sub-shrub. They don't get much bigger than that, but that one doesn't really look super happy. They like acidic conditions, same as blueberries and azaleas and rhododendrons and things like that. So it may be the acidity level of this bed because it's just not thriving here. Though the blueberries seem to be doing okay. There's another lingonberry, a different variety, to hopefully encourage better pollination. And there's another lingonberry, and they don't love it here. I've got to think about what I can do to the soil. Maybe find me some pine needles and use those as mulch around those guys. I also have a little cranberry there, and that's doing okay. And this is a pawpaw tree. The pawpaw, this is one of 3 pawpaws I have in the front yard here. They're rather close together. They should be close together because they are not pollinated by bees. They're pollinated by flies, and they're not always successfully pollinated. It's kind of a tricky thing. So once all 3 do flower for me, I'll probably have to hand pollinate them to ensure that I get fruit. But they are beautiful trees. They have very large tropical looking leaves, and they can stay whether or not they give me fruit. But they are also a host plant for the tiger swallowtail, I believe that's what it's called, butterfly, which is fairly rare in New Jersey these days. Pawpaw is native to this area, but it's not common. So I'm glad to plant this host plant and hopefully encourage that species of butterfly. This is a red currant, and it's in the rib family, and that is leafing out nicely. This is another pawpaw. It got damaged when I first moved here in 2015. It got completely run over and broken down at ground level, but it regrew. So it's far behind the others, but it seems to be doing okay. And more comfrey underneath it. You can see this bunch of onions here. These are Egyptian walking onions. They are perennial bunching onions, and they send up little bulbits to the tips that become heavy during the growing season and fall down next to the plant and create new plants, so they tend to walk around the garden. That's why they're called walking onions. This is lemon balm, and there's more bunching onions in there. I also have, I guess my hands are shaking because this is a long video, but I'm almost done. I'm just gonna do the front yard for this video. And this is a gooseberry. A gooseberry does really well. Gooseberry is also in the rib family. It fruits well in the shade, but this is not a shady spot, and it's doing fine here. It kind of does like a weeping action with its vines and layers very easily. You can see that that's kind of what it wants to do with these lower branches, and if you just were to put one against the ground and put a rock on it, it would definitely take root and start another plant. You can see some ground mint happening over here. That actually has, it's called a Chinese artichoke, and they create tubers under the ground that look like grubs, but they are good, edible, and stay crunchy and sweet, and they spread around like crazy. So I put them in on purpose, but some people don't like them in their yard. I do, because they are an edible tuber that doesn't get bothered by pests and is easy to grow. This is another pawpaw, and that one's doing real well. In this section of the yard, I have my Jerusalem artichokes. Sunchokes are in the sunflower family, and they have edible tubers. They have lovely yellow flowers that smell like chocolate, and they get to be about 8 to 10 feet tall. So they'll grow so that the tops of them will be well above my 6-foot fence. But the fence acts kind of as a windbreak and a little bit of support. Without it, I've had a patch of sunchokes that never ended up standing upright throughout the entire growing season because wind would blow them over or something like that. But here up against the fence, they do a lot better for me. So they are just starting to come up through the soil now, and I'm glad to see that they made it. They are very hardy, and even if you think you've dug up all the tubers in the yard, you will be blessed with sunchokes every year, probably for the rest of your life, because they come back very, very easily. We have some lavender in pots here and a little more lemon balm. And then over here, I've added a couple of new plants. This is Pulmonaria lungwort, and they are just getting completely eaten by slugs over here in this mulch. But I hope that they make it, and I'll give them a little bit of compost tea and hope that they can power through, because I think they have beautiful flowers and really interesting foliage. So that is my Earth Day garden tour of the front yard in 2020. I hope everyone has a really great and healthy and safe Earth Day, and please subscribe to the channel and like the video and leave me a comment and let me know what you're growing on Earth Day. And I hope that you get a chance to get out and plant some food and take care of your environment today. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.